We're back. It's the Courier. Hey, Greg.
Hey, Jonah. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Today's a pretty big day. We're going to get into that in a second. But got a fun guest introduced coming on later. Camille Terry, co-founder and CEO of ChargerHelp. Why is today so exciting, Greg?
It's Robotaxi Day, Jonah. Today is the day that Tesla is going to justify those future trillions of dollars. And I am so excited because I can't believe that my future retirement hinges on this being a success. I tell myself that every day about AI and everything else. But more than anything, we need this to work. Oh God. But we'll come back to that one.
Yeah, you and the entire stock market needed to work. Yeah, we got a lot to talk about today. A couple other AV pieces of news, cameras, Amazon, plenty. And of course, chat with Camille. Before we get into that, I just want to thank our sponsor as usual. This episode is brought to you by PizzaBox AI, the all-in-one subscription platform made for pizzerias. With PizzaBox's pizza subscription platform, offer customers a year of weekly pizza and raise up to $200K upfront, interest-free. Secure cash flow and loyalty with customers returning every week. Launch a subscription like Netflix, but faster. Learn more at pizzabox.ai. Robotaxis.
It's happening. Listeners, you probably know the details. Tonight, 7 p.m. Pacific, Elon and the Warner Brothers lot where various witnesses have spotted apparently the prototypes going around. But yes, based on the details, he will unveil the Robotaxi prototype that has been teased for so long, in addition to, I think, another vehicle I've been reading in various reports. And then, Jonah, and then what? Like trillions of dollars fall from the sky, right? I think that's the next part of it.
Trillions of dollars fall from the sky. I got half of mine to just climb up the hills above the back lot and see if I can just peek in myself. I mean, we're guessing what? Going to be revealed in one of the little backlot fate towns, right? Makes sense.
I was going to say, you were just there, whether it's a dining festival or Robotaxi on lunch. Like, yeah, we're all ending up.
We got fake towns for every purpose you could possibly need. But I mean, it's smart, right? In that sense, it's like a fake controlled town where no accidents can happen other than running into a starlet.
The perfect place for a fake controlled car in which you're going to display the prototype. Well, somewhat more seriously, interesting. So leaked reports point out that it's apparently going to be a two-seater with butterfly doors, which I think is interesting in two respects. One, like what? A two-seater? So I guess, me and my two boys will never be taking a Tesla Robotaxi, at least not together. Two,
well, you know how he feels about family.
That's true. A man with so many children, you think he would actually have a larger prototype for that. But then also, you have Mate Rimac, of course, who's, backed by the Porsches and all of their various Nest adventures, has also shown off a two-seater prototype. So it's very interesting that like this next generation of custom design Robotaxis is orienting towards two seats as opposed to 4 or 5 or 6. So that stands out to me. And yeah, I think no one's more excited about this than Kathy Wood and the folks over at ARC, which has reiterated today to the New York Times that this is definitely $1 trillion, and that their base case for Tesla shares in 2029 is $2,600 a share. That's only 10x, and that's the bull case is 3,100. So I think
it's nice to be reasonable there.
Yes, that's what their Monte Carlo simulations.
Cool X or so return from where we are today, right?
Yeah. So what could go wrong? So we'll see if Elon can possibly deliver. And again, this is just the prototype. Like I don't know if there's going to be any discussions of actual delivery dates, et cetera. But let's cover some other. There's 2 other interesting pieces of AV news this week because again, it looks like AVs are happening, or certainly this announcement will pour into that drumbeat of like, they're here, it's real, it's happening. One that stood out to me is Waymo inking a deal with Hyundai for bringing Ioniq 5. So this is interesting, of course, because Waymo's next generation is on Zeekr, a Chinese platform. But
they're retiring the Jaguars, yep.
You're retiring the Jaguars, but also so now we're going to bring in, Hyundai and their massive bet on electrification. Still no Detroit 3 players on its platform, which is interesting. But there you go. Waymo not totally doubling down on China. And then what do we got on the Uber side? They've got a whole deal too.
Yeah, and Uber just announced a new partnership with AV Ride after a couple other ones came on board in the last few weeks. So they're really hedging their bets, trying to get anyone that's got a self-driving car on the platform. And AV Ride, of course, being the new branding for what used to be the Yandex self-driving initiative. So spun that off, enough of that Russian nastiness. We're sorry about all that. And now making deals with Uber.
There you go. I say Uber's got deals with what? We got the deals with the Chinese in Abu Dhabi. They got deals with the Russians. Like, Uber's placing its bets on, hello, are you a semi-suspect AV company here? But it is interesting. We can see like the new stack forming. Like 10 years ago, like Uber had, of course, its own AV unit, and there was the idea that everyone was going to try to verticalize this themselves. But now you've got, the electric automakers doing the deals with the AV companies, and the AV companies are doing deals with Uber. And this, again, we've discussed before, but like I think Harry Campbell's idea that autonomous vehicles provide like your base load of ride hailing in the future, and that Uber brings that in, looks more and more correct to me. But I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, it lets everyone do what they're good at, right? Versus trying to make the entire stack yourself. So Uber's already got all the customers in the palm of their hands, and at the end of the day, they probably don't care that much if it's a person or a robot driver after the initial novelty's worn off. They just want a car at the right time and the right price. And then, Waymo is evidently figuring out how to get the software to work, but they don't need to be stamping metal all day long. And so leave that to Hyundai and the other people that churn out millions of cars each year.
So it looks like everyone's gonna stay in their lane, so to speak. And speaking of staying in lanes, you see what I did there?
I like this one.
Speaking of staying in lanes, so interesting enough, this world full of autonomous vehicles, because it's apparently coming. I mean, this was the original base case of our good pal Slater Reynolds at LADOT back in the day when they created the mobility data specification. Yep. You're going to need software to track all this stuff. There's news from LA. It's not as fancy as MDS, but what do we have there in terms of tracking?
What else can you use cameras for? As an Angelino, this one's particularly
Who
interesting
watches
to me.
the watchers on those cars? Yeah.
Turns out the buses watch the watchers. In LA, they just approved an ordinance to allow on-bus camera enforcement of bus lane scofflaws. So if you're a car driving in a bus lane when you shouldn't be, you can finally get a ticket because Lord knows the cops aren't doing it. I don't know, back when I was a younger man, I was maybe like a little bit more libertarian about the idea that we shouldn't have cameras everywhere, but we've already lost that battle to ring. And since, again, we've sort of given up on any sorts of enforcement of social norms or orderly functioning society in public, maybe this is what it takes to just have people follow traffic laws again. I don't know. Is this worth it in the trade-off?
But if you want to go with like fighting fire with fire, like let's just go full, social credit score on this here too.
I think a traffic ticket's just fine.
I was going to say, we can make you pay in all sorts of ways here if you really want to advance this idea. But yes, it is interesting. I mean, this is an idea that's been advanced for a while. I remember when Mobileye was talking about this, about mounting cameras on New York City's bus fleet for all sorts of purposes, not just enforcement, but, creating that municipal eyes on the street, literally, for various data collection. But yeah, it seems like we're headed down that road where it's just an arms race to see how many cameras you can get on the street or anywhere else for that matter.
Yeah, and it seems like the tech provider for this one is Hayden. They've done deals with a couple other cities, I think in Oakland, and I know they've even chatted with NYC, so it's happening. Cameras.
Well, speaking of cameras,
cameras,
one of the most interesting pieces... Well, I would say one of the most interesting pieces of news to me recently in the last few months or so was when, it was revealed that Amazon's, frictionless checkout system full of RFID and high-tech systems was really being run, of course, by a large call center full of Indian outsourcers who are using cameras to read people's receipts and carts by hand to actually complete it. And sure enough, Amazon has really, backing out of its just walk out systems here. What's the latest news on this one here? It appears that Amazon is not unstoppable.
It turns out it wasn't a mechanical Turk, right? It was a mechanical Indian. But it turns out that whether it's a computer watching the screens or a person, people don't like it and it's not that accurate. Amazon's sort of throwing in the towel, at least in terms of large format stores, for their frictionless checkout system where there's 1 million cameras up in the ceiling and it's watching you pick up the apple, put it in your cart, and it knows Greg's got an apple, charge him 89 cents when he walks out. They initially made it sound like they were just going to work on smaller stores. They've got these Amazon Go convenience stores, but they've also launched a Whole Foods convenience store that apparently it's not going to work in there either. It's kind of, the whole tech is receding. One of their competitors, Grab and Go, also just went bankrupt this week. So it turns out people don't like shopping inside Panopticons.
Well, but they do apparently love scanning their own groceries in their shopping carts. Like the fact that we have pivoted now to where the smart cart is actually the means of choice here. So you have Instacart basically sort of growing and gamifying. That bit of news came out here.
The caper cart, yeah.
The caper cart, yes. And now Amazon's pivoting to its own carts as well. Jonah, I've never used one. What is the appeal of this? I don't quite get it. I mean, I don't like automated.
You know how much you love the self-checkout section?
That's just it. I want to have it on
lug
wheels.
It with you. I mean, having tried both systems, I haven't tried a caper cart, but I've tried the Amazon cart. It's less creepy, right? It's just sort of a shopping cart with an Android tablet glued onto it, and it's just sort of like looking into your basket, and somehow it doesn't feel quite as wrong because the rest of the shopping experience still just feels like you're in a regular grocery store versus, I don't know, creepy camera world. So, yeah, I think at the end of the day, it's you put things in the cart, it keeps track. It doesn't feel like you're being watched. It just feels like, this is what's in my cart. So.
And the ongoing success and seeming popularity and at least expansion of those deals makes me understand like the whole Instacart advertising model. We're like, yeah, like I mean, everybody in the tech business wants to have hardware in the customer, in the user, the consumer's hands, where they can basically sell them ads, and like this is a giant ad conveyance device. So
yes,
I think that's
we don't make money off the food or the delivery. We just make money off the screen. But that's the story as old as time.
Well, there you go. Well,
but don't think that Amazon's throwing in the towel, right? They're still coming.
I was going to say, they make a lot of money in a lot of ways here, and apparently the number of ways of expanding here. So what was the event? Delivering the Future. I saw the news out of it, but basically Amazon had what? We now do iPhone reveals, and now we also now do like, here's all of our e-commerce reveals.
Yeah, it was a big week for branded corporate events, right? You also had the Uber Go Get Zero, but Amazon's Delivering the Future, nothing, nothing small about that title. They were really doubling down on same-day delivery for perishable special items. So expanding their Amazon Fresh grocery delivery to new cities, allowing customers to pair their fresh orders with traditional Amazon, non-perishables, so that if you want to say get some butter, but also a butter dish, they'll come in the same truck. And then rolling out Amazon Pharmacy to a bunch more cities, which I think that's the interesting one because that really puts pressure on the CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aids of the world, and they've obviously had a tough year or so. Right?
Walgreens is getting crushed on this. Walgreens Boots, and so I can imagine this is going to really put them in a vice even more.
And then on the back end of Delivering the Future, all sorts of new tech, back to the cameras, right? So imagine inside your Amazon truck, a watchful, helpful eye that's saying, "Oh, you're at 123 Main Street," shines a green light on package number 7 and says, "Pick that up, take it outside, you dumb human."
Yeah, there you go. I mean, it's a sort of a low-tech form of augmented reality, but here you go. I mean, I was thinking about this, like in the sense of, another application of machine vision, using it in a B2B context, very interesting there. And speaking of, of machines and automation, again, standing out that, Amazon is building a big automated facility on Long Island. I think the news came out here that there's going to be another one underway in Philly. Like, it's interesting to me because, Amazon had its huge expansion during the pandemic, during that turbocharging of all this commerce. They roll out Amazon Fresh. Then they pause it for a couple of years as the whole, receding of all the pandemic era supercharge. But now the expansion has begun. Like this strikes me as like the next March that Amazon is back on the offensive with all this and back in expansion. And I'm very curious to see, I guess how much purchase they get this time around here with this. Amazon Fresh was
they
not
still haven't quite proven that they can make physical grocery stores work, whether it's a normal shopping experience or not. They've struggled with that. They're great at the internet. I don't know. People like human shopping experiences. They've done all these other retail experiences that don't work. The Amazon 5-star stores, those all closed. So it's a different game at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, obviously we talk about omnichannel all the time, but it's interesting that like Amazon cannot get its omnichannel omni enough, or whatever this means, or it's still tinkering at the edges. So be curious to see how these play out.
But they're near multi-channel. They're not yet omni-channel.
Yeah, exactly. The multiverse is not completely in their hands. Well, speaking of so DoorDash continues to hold out. There are holdouts to the empire. What was the big DoorDash news? They're expanding as well.
Yeah, I thought this one was interesting because basically all the humongous Kroger, Albertson flag grocery stores have all been snapped up by now. So it's just the smaller guys that are left. So DoorDash, 2 separate announcements. One about Wegmans, which is, I suppose, one of the most beloved grocers in the Northeast. I've never quite understood the hype for many years living in the Northeast. Maybe you did, Greg, but it's a nice grocery store. It's feels a little personable, but I don't know. Grocery stores in the tri-state area kind of all suck. Someone in Connecticut's going to punch me now. And then the second one was a bunch of other smaller regional grocers, Kowalski's, Marval Food Stores, Geisler's, and they're all on DoorDash now. Yeah, I think these tend to have a little bit more brand power that, it seems like they attract people to actually like the stores versus just, oh, it's the nearest one, so I go there. And in some of the smaller markets, it's the only game in town. So it's a nice way of kind of filling in the final dots on the map for DoorDash.
There you go. I'm still a DoorDash holdout, but if they can get Trader Joe's and Stu Leonard's on that platform, I am there all day. As someone who literally,
Trader Joe's is fighting the internet till the very last drop.
I know that's why I hand deliver Trader Joe's to Canada. Suitcases of groceries is what I bring back into the country.
Do they have a Quebecois sub brand yet? Every ethnically mildly offensive Trader Joe's.
I look forward to buying all of my ramen labeled in French. I don't think Trader Joe's is willing to cross that bridge quite yet.
The world is flat. All right, well, without further ado, let's talk to Camille Terry. Now we're speaking with Camille Terry of ChargerHelp, and I'm really excited about this one because charging is obviously a very hot topic, and Camille's got so much to share about it. So, Camille, hey, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start at the very beginning, shockingly. Why don't you just walk us through ChargerHelp's founding story? Like, what led you to start the company?
Absolutely. I had the really incredible opportunity to work at a company that we were making software for EV charging stations. And this was almost 9 years ago at this point. And I want to say probably about the 10th employee there, and I was EV driver support. And so during that position, very early in my climate career, I got a unique understanding of what EV drivers experienced once charging stations were deployed. I learned a ton about just what data and information just wasn't being communicated back to anyone's, software backend, and got a little obsessed with trying to figure out, how do I get access to that data? How do I figure out how to solve, this reliability problem? And it led me to starting ChargerHelp in January of 2020, right before, the world became the world.
The perfect time to start a business, yeah. Nothing but smooth sailing, I imagine.
Nothing.
But yeah. So for those that don't know the company, can you give us the elevator pitch?
Absolutely. At ChargerHelp, we are really obsessed with EV charging reliability. And for some folks that they may think that why does someone need to be obsessed with that? But today we find, at any given time, 30% of the current infrastructure can be inoperable. We find that mean time to repair is sitting at about 60 days. And the most interesting part is that upwards of 80 to 90% of the issues are software issues and software interoperability issues. And there really isn't a company that's dedicated to kind of smoothing out what it takes when you deploy charging stations with a lot of software. And so that's what we've been doing.
So it's all about reliability. And I know there's a new reliability report that we're going to get to in a second. But before we get to that juicy topic, just to kind of give listeners a kind of a why, right? Anyone that's owned an EV knows that charging, while it usually works great, every once in a while there's a time where you pull up to a charger, you really wanted to get a little bit more juice, and you get there and it just isn't working. You go to the stall next to it and that one's also down too, or it's occupied, and all of a sudden, a stress-free trip is how am I going to get home now? And so ChargerHelp, at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to solve, right? Trying to make charging work. And if charging doesn't work, there's no charging.
No, absolutely. And the way that I think about it is that with any new innovation, you have to iterate. And what we've been helping the industry do is to iterate in the right places because they're moving really, really fast. And these charging stations are at the corners of highways and byways. So getting information once it's deployed is not easy. So we see ourselves as step 2 to after you deploy chargers.
Putting on your founder's cap for a second, can you share how have you gone about fundraising, winning over clients, customers? What's the pitch?
Yeah, I think the biggest pitch for us has been, I'm just really nerdy about this topic. And I think that people either one finds it very weird or very intriguing, but it's a level of trust, right? When folks talk with me, they know that I know this problem very, very well. And a lot of folks are familiar with my work ethic. So in the beginning, when I first started as a founder, before I had a lot of people, folks just kind of believed in me. And that went a really long way. My reputation. And then over time, you hire the right people, you build the right technology, and then your product speaks for you. But in those beginning times, it is a lot of trust. So much so, my first customer was actually the company I used to work at. And one of the guys there was just Camille, we know you know what you're doing. Let's hire your brand new spanking company. And that was a huge opportunity for us, and one of my first and largest contracts that we won back then. Now
So the moral of the story is be dorky and be trustworthy.
I tell my team all the time, I said the nerds will always win. They win in the end.
Gosh, let's hope so, right? Okay, and so I know you all have a new piece of data or I should say, a report that's come out, right? Talk to us about the reliability report.
Yeah. So just a little bit of context. When I was doing EV driver support for the company I was at, one of the things that was so interesting to me would be that drivers would explain a certain situation that was not reflected in my software backend. So they may say the station is not charging. And sometimes on my backend, it would show that, no, it looks like the station is charging. Or they would say, oh, this station isn't working. And I would see on my platform, like, no, it's working. So there was this mismatch of like what was actually happening and what the station was saying. The other thing that was very interesting is that when we sent folks out to fix the station, they honestly were just doing QA testing. They were helping our software engineer understand how something was working and what was the sequences of events. So that data set we were very interested in. So at ChargerHelp, we've been like fixing stations, getting data, all that jazz. And one of my desires has always been to, one, help folks understand that what I say is like the house is not on fire. Like everything does not suck, but there are real things that we can fix, right? And so this report is basically the study of our data for the last 5 years. It's looking at 19 million unique data points from over 25,000 charging stations from all 50 states. And we pull out 10 key learnings. And then we also highlight companies and organizations that are doing things underneath the flag of good uptime and reliability. So we show data, we show what the problems are, and we show examples of what folks and states have been doing in order to tackle the problem, because it's a solvable problem.
It's a solvable problem. And I have to imagine, in a way, it sort of pays for itself to do it, right? Like just the cost of sending an engineer or tech out there to just half the time press the reset button, that's got to be hundreds of dollars just including travel time, right?
Exactly. And in those instances where the station is getting stuck, or like say you got blow the cartridge, oftentimes like there is something happening in the back end that's making that station stuck. So cycling the breaker is a Band-Aid, but if you can understand, oh, I cycled the breaker every single time this type of car plugged into this station and this protocol was pushed, for some reason the station got stuck, oh, maybe we need to look into what's happening in the exchange of information here. That's what we're interested in. That's what we've been working on.
So digging into the report a little bit, like what's one of the most interesting findings you think?
As I don't know if they can see, I'm whipping out the report.
She's going to the book, folks.
I got the book. I mean, the biggest interesting finding, which actually is we saw that there was a strong correlation that when stations were down, the payment system was also down. And so software interoperability between credit card readers and charging stations, it's something that we see fail quite often. Anecdotally, people chat about it, but it was very interesting to see that correlation. The other thing that was interesting is that folks usually talk about we call it zombie stations. There were these stations that said that they were working, but then actually they weren't working, and then vice versa. And so that was interesting because the data that we were pulling actually comes off of the AFDC, the Alternative Fuels Data Center. And this is the data set that the federal government uses to validate availability. And so what we were seeing is that the information that the federal government was receiving from network providers was in fact wrong. And so that's very scary and concerning because there are no laws that are coming about uptime and reliability. So for that data set to show that there were so many stations that were misreporting itself, it's a bit concerning. We want to be hopeful to network providers to ensure that they are reporting the right information.
Yeah. If you don't have reliable data, what do you got? Nothing.
Right.
So the report it's chock-a-block full of fun charts and graphs. If you're someone that likes shiny symbols that make it seem like you're learning, like I do, it's amazing. You can just scroll through it and be overwhelmed with colors. One thing I noticed though, there's lots and lots of graphs of the country where it's red, bad, green, good, different states. Washington State just seems to be really mucking things up. There's all sorts of charts showing Washington State, terrible reliability, ports are always down. What's up in Washington?
Yeah, I mean, we see that there's some states that had had early deployment. So you may see that also in California. And then the part that we don't show is that in some areas there's high concentration of certain manufacturers and network providers. So the other thing that the report calls out is that there are some manufacturers and network providers that are significantly less reliable than others. So I'll leave that there.
Very political. Well, okay, Governor Inslee, get your staff on this quick. Well, I'd say besides reliability, it seems an important part of the business is obviously the workforce development side, right? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the way that we think about charging is that it's not a labor problem. Like, just because you send a technician on site does not mean you will fix the station. Those two things do not equate to one another. What we found out early on, going back to that initial story with those, with the technicians that we would send out to do the QA testing, getting insightful data from the station, and even more importantly, understanding what questions to ask and understanding the systems of how the data is flowing for that technician on the ground is the most important part of all of this, right? Because we believe that you can solve this problem through big data, but you do need good quality data from the field. And so we started to, we worked with the Society of Automotive Engineers alongside car OEMs and manufacturers, and all of these folks to come up with this body of knowledge that basically said, this is what an EVSE technician needs to know and understand. And then we ourselves, we train off of that curriculum, but that body of knowledge is available to anyone. SAE partnered with Pearson, and folks can now sit for a test to become an EVSE technician. But it's really this space that is teaching you about kind of IT in the field, IoT assets that are publicly deployed, and how you should think about the systems that make up that asset, and what questions should you ask, what information should you put in order to solve a problem, because it's not always turn the screw. Most of the time, there's not anything about the screw.
And so that's so cool because it sort of starts someone's upskilling journey, right? Like, have you had techs long enough that you've seen, hey, you started with this sort of basic level, now you've progressed to a master technician, or maybe you've even outgrown the company and now you're doing your own thing?
Oh my goodness. In the beginning, which is now, we have a few technicians, but not a ton. And we've been working more with partner organizations, but companies would just pick off my technicians. I got technicians now at Lucid and Tesla, all these places. They were just picking on, which is, look, at the end of the day, all of our technicians are folks that did not have a climate background. They're coming from these adjacent fields. They may have been making half the amount that they're making now. And so to find people, that are so talented, be able to give them additional knowledge, and for them to then, make even more at these other companies, that's amazing. But yes, we've seen folks go to other companies. We've also seen folks transition into like customer service, even folks going on to become an electrician. We actually have one of our guys ended up going through IBW, became a union electrician, just because they got very curious about the space, right? And I think like that is something that I'm probably most proud of about this company.
That's great. Although obviously you're training them too well if they're churning out.
I know. I was like, oh, well, can't pay you that. I mean, we pay well, but I was like, Rivian might pay you twice as much. I don't know what to tell you.
It's a good problem to have. So kind of wrapping things up, I'm curious, big picture, where do you see the overall EV market, the EV charging space? Like, what's the next couple of years look like?
And goodness, I am just really excited for overall better experience and better designs. One of my favorite sayings is to talk about how, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, all the electric vehicles were turquoise and ugly, and they just wanted like, there wasn't something that like, I'm gonna go buy a, da-da-da-da. Nobody was excited about that. But one of my baby brothers, before I got an electric vehicle, he got an electric vehicle. Does he care about the environment? He doesn't hate the environment, but he's like...
Putting family members on blast, wow.
Right, he doesn't, but he liked the car because he liked the design. So I'm super excited to just see really, really cool design come into place for the charging stations and also the electric vehicles itself. And I'm really interested in us getting more creative about sustainable mobility. EVs are not the silver bullet. We have to think about a multitude of ways of moving with one another without killing the environment. It's a thing. So that's what I'm most excited about, design and products that delight you.
Yep. Yeah. So more products, and I would also say as the market continues to mature, seeing more affordable EVs come out,
Of course,
seeing
that
used
too.
EVs
Yes,
become more
yes.
robust, and I feel like that opens up a whole kind of realm of delivery workers,
Oh
Uber
yeah,
drivers that can now use EVs. And then for you, those are people that more likely to need the charger to work because they don't necessarily have their own at home. So
1000%.
that just creates an even more robust market. Yeah, Camille, thank you so much for chatting with me. This was super fun. And folks out there, check out the reliability report.
Yes. Thank you so much.